Hello, everyone. This is Tim Ash, the CEO of Site Tuners and chairperson of the Conversion Conference. And we're continuing today with our webinar series. And I'm very happy to have Sean Ellis as our guest today and the guest presenter. Sean and I were recently at the Chicago Conversion Conference where we had a very spirited panel discussion. For those of you that don't know, among his many accomplishments, Sean is the CEO of Qualaroo and also the guy that coined the term growth hacking, which we're going to discuss, I'm guessing, just a little bit today. Sean, welcome to the webinar.
Thanks, Tim. Excited to be on here with you.
Yeah, I'm just going to kind of sit back and let you take it away, but I may pop in with some questions along the way. For those of you on the webinar, please submit your questions. You should have a questions pane, and we're going to get to those, as many as we can, towards the end. I'll kind of moderate that. So as you think of it, or as we're going along, please submit your questions, but we'll probably handle them all towards the end of the webinar. All right, Sean, please take it away.
All right, great. Thanks, Tim. So, so what I'm going to take everyone through today is really a presentation that will help you make a case for conversion rate optimization in your business. So, some people I know are not doing it at all. Some people are doing it, but not to the extent that they know they should be doing it. And I think in everyone's case, getting more organizational support around conversion rate optimization is something that would benefit everyone. And so this presentation is really covering the ways that conversion rate optimization helps a business grow, and I'll draw on my experience with a bunch of different companies and the role that it played in those companies. So taking let's make sure these slides are advancing. There we go. So a little bit on my background. So right now I'm the founder and CEO of Qualaroo and also run the growthhackers.com site, but I previously spent 10 years at two different companies where I was the first marketing guy through building a team and taking the companies to the point where we filed both of them to go public. And so I was able to really see different inputs and their importance in driving growth. And what I can tell you from those experiences, that conversion rate optimization was by far the most powerful thing that we did to take a company from customer zero through an IPO filing. So what I did after that was I went into companies like Dropbox and Lookout and Eventbrite in shorter term interim roles where I really helped them instrument growth and really prepare to be able, stack the odds for them to be able to grow to a large scale. And a big part of what I did was conversion rate optimization. So I often had to go into companies early on and convince them that that conversion rate optimization was really important for their ability to grow long term. So what I'll be talking about today is a lot of what I needed to talk about with those companies as well. And so one of the things that I looked for before I went into those companies was to make sure that they actually were growable in the first place. So a lot of them were just bringing in a few early customers, and I was able to look at some of the feedback and just make sure that conversion rate optimization would matter at all. So I had to just validate that they had the elements in place that allowed them to grow. For example, if nobody wanted their product, then a real efficient conversion process to have someone sign up and use the product was probably not their biggest issue. So that was the first thing that I really looked for, was those early users on the product, when they came in and used the product, did they consider it a must-have or nice to have or not important at all? And I needed enough signal to know that the product was a must-have for at least a group of people. And ideally, a group of people was a large market. So if it's not a must-have product for a large market, it's going to be really hard to sustain growth long-term. And so, again, conversion rate optimization maybe is a little less important in that situation. And then, obviously, cost-effective acquisition of customers was also important. And there's a little bit of a chicken and the egg there. If you have very inefficient conversion optimization, then, or very inefficient conversion process, then you're going to have a really hard time finding customer acquisition channels that are cost-effective. And so part of it is enough signal that you can spend some money or you can figure out some effective way to acquire customers, and then as you demonstrate the ability to send people to the site, then conversion rate optimization is a way to be able to then scale those things and keep improving your efficiency there. But that was sort of the starting point to even figure out if growth was something that's important. And so a lot of companies need to really kind of look, do they have the elements of sustainable growth before they dig into the whole idea of conversion rate optimization. But assuming that you've got that, then it's all about growth, and conversion rate optimization is super important for driving that growth. But before I jump into the exact details on that, I just want to define, when I think about growth, what growth is to me. So growth, you can think of growth as people signing up, registering for a service. You can think of it as even sales for a product. But think about like a television sales program of an infomercial selling a product that doesn't really work very well and sort of a false promise. Like, to me, that's not real growth. That's just some fake marketing or some marketing selling some flimsy product. But to me, real growth is about units of gratification. It's about lots of people who are getting a great experience with a product, and when you have that kind of growth, you have something that's sustainable, can build real value. And so when I'm talking about how conversion rate optimization leads to growth, that's the type of growth that I'm talking about. And when I'm talking about conversion rate optimization, this simple formula is what I like to think of as conversion rate optimization. So to me, your conversion rate is really a function of how much people want your product and how much friction there is for people face when they're trying to get the product. And if you increase desire, you're going to have people who are willing to deal with some friction. And if the desire is not very strong, then people are gonna not complete the conversion process if they face any friction. So ideally, the two big levers that you're working with are increase that friction, or increase that desire, and decrease the friction. And as you do that, your conversion rates will increase. So that's a simplistic way to look at conversion rate optimization, but one that I come back to and think a lot about. So now we'll go into the 7 ways that conversion rate optimization can help improve your ability to grow your business. Just want to open it. Tim, did you have any comments at this point?
No, go ahead, Sean. Keep rolling, and I'm sure if I have something to add, I will. And Lance Loveday, welcome to the webinar.
Good to have somebody that we both know well on there. So hey Lance. Harvest enhanced desire is really the first thing that conversion rate optimization is about in driving growth. That if you can really harvest the desire and the intent that's out there for your product, and enhance the desire around that, that's a huge part of what marketing is all about. But it's also a huge part of what conversion rate optimization is about. So when I think about intent, I think about, if I can drive that desire, as I talked about, that brings a ton of momentum that leads someone toward that conversion event. But intent itself is, to me, one of the most powerful marketing forces that we have to work with as marketers. If that ultimately, Google, for example, one of the most valuable companies in the world, is all about understanding and delivering people's intent around the web. And so when you can tap in and deliver that intent, you have something that's really powerful. And anybody who hits your website has intent. So they have a reason that they're there. And if you can tap into that reason and you can position your product against that intent, you're going to be in a great position to drive a conversion. So you definitely want to understand the intent that's out there and capitalize on that intent as best as you can. And when you do that, you take the slack out of the market. So you might be growing really quickly, but if you're only tapping into a portion of the intent, then you're opening the door to others to also sell into that intent. So you really want to try to maximize your ability to convert as much of the intent that's out there. And your best opportunity is when someone hits your website, they've got that intent. You want to understand what their intent is, what their desire is, increase their desire as you understand that intent, and drive them toward that conversion event. So a couple of questions that I like to ask to be able to do that. One is simply on a page level intent, just asking people, does this page make you want to sign up for this product? So, you know, if you're an e-commerce company, it might be make you want to buy these shoes. If you're a SaaS company, it might be sign up for this product. But so you can kind of, that's why I put it in brackets there, you can adjust it to whatever your business is. So that would be on a page level, but on an overall visit level, you might ask, what are you hoping this product can do for you? And when you understand the answers to those questions, you can really start to make adjustments to how you're communicating with people to tap into that intent. So this is an example of how you might ask that latter question. So what are you hoping this product can do for you? You can pop that on a page as somebody hits your website. You can time it so that it's fairly early in the visit only for first-time visitors. And when you collect that information, you can then start to make your page a lot more effective and your website a lot more effective. So,
yeah, and Sean, I think that, you know, I saw a recent example of this. Will Reynolds from Sierra Interactive, they're a great SEO company out of Philadelphia and now San Diego. He was saying, you know, a lot of times you can get intent just from keywords, just auto-complete a phrase. You know,
yeah.
I hope that these window blinds will, and see what comes up in Google Auto Suggest, and you can tap into a lot of how people are thinking about it that way, just like you're doing here with an actual question.
That's great, and even in hindsight, like somebody who converts, you can ask them afterwards, you know, why did you originally sign up for this product? So, you know, and you can talk to people. So I think, yeah, signal that you can get from search is great. Type ahead, type things that you're just touching on there, but ultimately, there's lots of tools to get the answer, but the important thing is to know the question that you should be trying to answer, which is, what the heck is somebody coming to my website to try to do in the first place? When you can tap into that intent, you have a really powerful growth lever for your business. So the next way that conversion rate optimization, it helps with growth, is that it reduces the frustration and friction that people have when they're coming to your website. So again, if we remember that original formula, conversion rate equals desire minus friction, if you can reduce that friction and frustration, not only are you going to drive more conversions, but you're actually going to create a lot more goodwill toward your company and toward your business that becomes important long-term in having a good position in the market and being able to grow well. So some of the ways that you can reduce friction are sorry, I'm going to thrown off here for a second. So you know, this point here, scaling frustration is dangerous. This is something that I had a venture capitalist when I was at LogMeIn bring this up, and he was a very forward-looking venture capitalist, because a lot of venture capitalists are just like grow, grow, grow. But he said, if we try to grow this business right now while we had some real friction in our conversion process, we're going to frustrate a lot of people, and we're going to have a hard time growing this business in the long run. And he made the point that rarely do you get a second chance when somebody's been frustrated trying to sign up for your service the first time. So what you want to be able to do then is to uncover the friction that people have as they're coming into your website. And again, you can do that through questions. So you can ask somebody any questions before signing up, before checking out, before purchasing. That can start to tell you the types of things that are that you're not answering effectively on the website. Or you can be more blunt and say, is anything preventing you from signing up? And then when you tie that information to actual data that is tracked, like user behavior data and any of the other data that you have, I have a company that uses Qualaroo that gave us feedback that they were losing a ton of conversions in their shopping cart, but when they asked this type of a question and they tied the data to to their analytics, they realized that it was really just one of their browsers that was causing a lot of issues that people were actually not able to check out. So that's obviously extremely frustrating. But other times it might just be that you're not addressing one of their key concerns. And so the more things that you can do to reduce that frustration and friction, the more likely you're going to not only improve short-term conversions, but again, create a lot more goodwill in the overall market. So as you start to increase desire, reduce friction, then you start to be able to build momentum into your business, and conversion rate optimization is huge for building that early momentum. It is one of the least expensive ways to grow a business. It helps you get more value out of every dollar that you're spending and increases your ability to cost effectively spend those dollars. And as you do that, you'll drive that momentum. And in a startup in particular, that momentum is huge for being able to attract additional capital. And and it's also every time you make an improvement with conversion rate optimization, you start to teach the rest of your organization that that data and testing can lead to improvements, and there's a lot less debate and just sort of random work that starts being done. People start being very data-driven across all different parts of the organization, not just within the conversion rate optimization part of the business or the marketing part of the business, but you can start to get it down into the product as well, where people start to say, why do we spend all this time on this feature if nobody actually uses this feature? Things like that. So data-driven improvements definitely are infectious. That momentum that you start to build does attract growth capital, and so it becomes really important to make sure that you get that momentum early in the business, and that you prioritize tests that are much more likely to give you those early wins. And so that's where you want to be super scientific around finding real problems that people are having with the website. You truly understand why they're coming to the website, and that you're running the types of tests that have a high percentage chance of winning, and it's not just a random testing of things that may or may not matter. And the more likely you get those wins up front, the more likely you're going to drive that momentum that feeds into a lot of different parts of the business.
Now, quick question. Brandon Gaines had a thought about, actually on the last slide, about your thoughts on the value of Net Promoter Score surveys in determining product and market fit. What do you think of Net Promoter Score? That's a pretty popular thing for larger enterprises anyway.
Yeah, I love Net Promoter Score. I think to me, Net Promoter Score is sort of a reflection of the overall health of the business. It's sort of the survey equivalent of your MRR, say in a SaaS business. So MRR, your monthly recurring revenue. It essentially, no one's going to promote so Net Promoter Score, just in case somebody doesn't know exactly what that is just asking people the likelihood that they would recommend the product and giving them a scale of 1 to 10 and a formula that essentially sort of benchmarks where you are and you're trying to improve it, and that ultimately if people have a very high likelihood of talking about your product and recommending your product, then that reflects not only is your product providing a valuable service to them, but your customer support is creating a lot of goodwill towards your business. Yeah, you don't have a lot of frustration in your conversion process. You're meeting their needs in a way that thrills them. Kind of like each of those pieces that, the salespeople in your organization are pleasant to work with. So that's why I'm saying that it really reflects the overall health of your business and becomes really important. So I do think that it's a really good question to ask and a good metric to look at. Did that answer your question, Tim?
Oh, it absolutely answered mine. I think it also answered Brandon. Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry. Keep going.
Okay, great. So this next part is, I gave you the example of LogMeIn and some of the early frustrations that we had, or that some of our users had in trying to sign up for that product. And when I had that venture capitalist essentially say, let's not try to scale this business with the frustrations that that users are having in this conversion process. So we spent about 4 months of just very intensive, all hands on deck. The entire company really focused around coming up with the tests that mattered, running those tests, and improving conversion rate at really every point from an initial visit to the website through to a successful remote access, the first time that they remotely accessed and controlled their computer from another computer. And until they got to that point, we weren't creating any of that gratification and any of that real growth. And so, one, we didn't want to scale growth because we had a really frustrating experience, but two, it was really hard to scale growth anyway. And when we put all of those resources into improving conversion rates and then went back and tried to scale growth, we tested a lot of the same channels that previously had not worked, and those channels suddenly became super effective for us. And so you just kind of think of it on a dollar term. For every dollar we maybe invested in a channel before we did all of that optimization, we would get maybe 90 cents back. Obviously, that's not a channel that is viable long term, but for each, after we did our optimization, we saw about a 1,000% increase from a visit to a successful remote control session. And after we did that, and which correlated directly to the percentage of people that purchased, now for every dollar we spent on that same campaign, we're getting $9 back. We're gonna obviously pour as many dollars into that campaign as possible. So it's not just about improving the performance of a single campaign. It's actually opening up campaigns that didn't work at all in the past. So that's that 10x improvement in conversion is opened up like a 100x increase in growth. And we were able to grow that business with a freemium product where we didn't charge 90–95% of the users to even use the product. We were able to grow that product and spend very aggressively acquiring customers, and did it with cash flow positive performance until our NASDAQ filing a few years later. So this was a huge part of making that a successful business.
Yeah, and to echo that a little bit, I think one of the things that people think is that if I get a 20% increase in conversion, I have a 20% increase in my business. Well, that's not true, because like what you said, all of a sudden all these campaigns become ROI positive, and your scale increases too. We all know, for example, that being at the very top of Google search results is a great thing, because that's where the lion's share of the traffic is. Well, if you can bump up your conversion a little and be able to cost effectively buy those top spots, for example, you can get a huge increase in the amount of traffic, and not just in the profitability of it. So you can basically use that as a big stick to beat your competitors with.
Absolutely, and so the critical thing is, if you do a lot of campaign testing and certain campaigns don't make the cut, and then you have some big wins in conversion rate optimization, always be sure to go back and test things that previously didn't work, because there's a good chance that a lot of those things now are going to be very viable and very scalable. And the fact that the economics are kind of tight on them, there's a good chance that your competitors haven't gotten efficient enough to make that channel work for them. And just as Tim was just saying, that can be that advantage that really helps you pull ahead in the market. So another really important part of conversion rate optimization is that it actually helps customer retention as well. And it might seem a little odd that it would do that, but if you think about it, it actually makes a lot of sense. So I like to think of something called the must-have experience. So that's what I mean by this MHX here. So Tim was asking earlier about Net Promoter Score. I have something in startups that I like to ask that I kind of call a must-have score, and it's essentially the percentage of people, when I ask people how would they feel if they could no longer use the product. So people who've actually gone in and used the product, when I ask them how they would feel if they couldn't use it anymore, I'm looking for the percentage who say they would be very disappointed. And if I have a high percentage of those people saying they'd be very disappointed, I know I have a product that creates that kind of passion that's important in using the product. So what I start to look for is, what is the experience that people need to have with the product before they consider it a must-have. And once they reach that experience, they're very likely going to be sticking around on the product a long time. So they're going to buy that first time, and they're going to keep using it. They consider it a must-have. Why would they stop using it? And so conversion rate optimization, in my mind, is about getting people to that must-have experience. And when you get them there, you do find that your retention rate is going to go much higher. So that's a really important part of growth, is retaining the people who come in the first place. So conversion rate optimization is getting people to that must-have experience with the product. And in order to do that, you need to be able to really understand first what your must-have experience is, and then build and start testing an effective promise that represents that must-have experience. So that's a lot of the messaging tests that you can do in conversion rate optimization on the front door of your website. If your promise is not aligned with what your product is actually effective at doing, you're going to create a lot of false expectations, and people are going to be pretty frustrated with the product, with the inability of the product to actually deliver on that promise. So you need to really be authentic and tap into what makes your product a must-have, build that into your messaging, set the right expectations, and then streamline the process of delivering that experience. And when you get more people to that experience, you'll find that your customer retention goes way up. And a lot of times it's a matter of running filters and really figuring out which customers are the right customers who really need that experience. And so there's a lot of rich information that's in that data. But once you know what the experience is and who the right people are for that experience, then getting the right people to the right experience is huge for being able to grow a business.
Well, yeah, and I want to kind of amplify that, because I think you know, in a way, we're still making it sound like you're looking for, on average, you know, what's the right messaging and positioning for this product or service. But where our kind of advanced clients have seen huge gains, we're talking, you know, 500 to 1,000% kind of gains, is when they start niching. And when you're talking, you know, personalization, using behavioral targeting and lead scoring to just have exactly the right message for that audience. Once we were trying to land a client in gaming, and they said, well, who are your clients? And we said, well, Nestle and Verizon Wireless and, you know, all these other big companies. And they said, no, in gaming. And then when we said, oh, Party Poker and 888, then their eyes lit up. So, you know, when you're talking to someone in a targeted way, you get outsized returns and huge gains in conversion. And there's a lot of technologies now that make it relatively simple to personalize content one-to-one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the critical, I think that's a slippery slope, because sometimes people can get, sometimes you start trying to deliver on every intent that someone might have that's somewhat related to your product. And the critical thing is to make sure that there is a must-have experience for each of those needs, so that if you are going to build a promise and streamline the delivery of that promise, you just have to make sure that it's authentic around something that the product is truly great at doing. And so that's where I like to really reverse engineer the successful customers, and making sure that you're sort of working backwards from there, rather than working simply from intent and trying to harvest as much of that intent as possible.
Well, sorry, I'm just going to kind of explore this a little more. So let's just say you're buying tires, and what kind of car do you drive, Sean?
Jeep.
Okay, so you're a Jeep guy, and those are, you know, that's a special breed, right? So if you go, you know, one of our clients was you know, actually a Jeep supply website, and, you know, they had some very convoluted user experiences, but the people that own Jeeps would walk on broken glass to get Jeep aftermarket parts. And so if you just speak Jeep language, that's a very, very powerful thing. And so if someone showed up to buy tires on my site and it said, we know all about the best tires for your Wrangler CJ or whatever it is, then you'd probably have a much higher response rate. So it's the same intent, but personalizing it can be very powerful.
Yeah, I definitely agree that personalizing is huge, and it's making. I'm not sure. Would you agree that not every intent is worth trying to convert?
Absolutely. I think you have to kind of knock off the top few. So it's the rule of 80-20, like everything else. What segments will you go after? It might be just down to the traffic source, or you might actually be building predictive models of people and lead scoring them and putting them in different clusters automatically. There's technologies for that as well. Companies like Commerce Sciences, for example, are letting you do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think it's awesome how advanced you can get when you really start to segment and drive conversions within those segments. And as long as you have an ability to deliver a must-have experience for any of those segments, then I totally agree. What you want to do is personalize that entire path as much as possible for that segment. So very similar to customer retention as being an important growth metric that's a function of your must-have experience. Word of mouth is very similar to that. It's essentially a function of driving people to that must-have experience. So word of mouth is by far the most powerful growth driver that if you kind of took all businesses and all value that's created in customer acquisition, word of mouth would dominate. That it's free, it's a function of delivering a great experience, and most of the fastest growing businesses that I've worked on or studied, it's the dominant channel that drives growth. And it's really a function of getting people to a fantastic experience with your product. And every time you do that, you see an increase in word of mouth. Obviously, some products are better at driving word of mouth than others. And if you have an adult diaper product, you may be delivering a must-have experience for the user, but they might be embarrassed about telling everyone what a great product it is. So doesn't necessarily.
Boy, that's the best hemorrhoid treatment I've ever used, right?
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of products that people are not necessarily proud to spread the word about that they consider must-have, but I think for any product, it's about baselining where you are and realizing what drives that word of mouth, and generally it's about a must-have experience, and it's pretty rare that a product just doesn't support word of mouth, but it happens. So.
Okay, but let's talk about some products. I mean, obviously some of the examples and the companies you've been involved with are scalable because, like you say, they have a large market and it's a business to consumer or business to small business kind of setting. But what types of products lend themselves more towards word of mouth? Obviously, tangible products, visible physical objects, but any other characteristics or industries that you can point to where it's just particularly effective?
It's interesting that I think there's some surprising examples that there's obvious examples like a Tesla is going to be something that people might be proud of talking about and sharing and showing people, and it'll spark good conversations, and people will say, hey, how do you like your Tesla? So that's not that surprising, but a payments system is not something that you would necessarily expect people to spread the word about, but when a payment system is done in the right way, it can actually be great for spreading the word. So I would say Square is an awesome example there, where by creating a physically a physical identifiable sort of part of the payment process, and then making it noteworthy and discussion worthy, and then thrilling on the back end. So Square, for anyone who doesn't know, it's just for processing credit cards in small businesses, but a big part of their growth engine is just something that sparks conversation. When someone goes in to make a payment, they say, oh, what's that all about? And that's been an important growth driver in their business. But it's not
well,
just.
Let's talk about specifically why that is. I think I was talking about that physical manifestation of something. So the way it works is it plugs into the headphone jack of your smartphone, and it has this little white square card reader that hangs off the side of the phone. And so people go, what the heck is that little thing? What's that dongle? What are you doing there? And so I think, so definitely physical manifestation. But let's go a little broader. Brandon is asking, are there any tactics that you can use to accelerate word of mouth, especially in kind of conversion context?
Yeah, so one of the great tactics for it is the double-sided incentive that that companies like Uber and Dropbox use, where if you give your existing customers an incentive to spread the word, and so that they're actually getting something of value when they spread the word, and then they have something unique that they're able to offer. So in the case of Uber, it's a $25 credit that you're able to give to your friends to try Uber, but every time they use it, you get $25 yourself. And that was something that we started something very similar at Dropbox when I was there, and where if you recommended Dropbox to somebody else, you got 250 megabytes of space, and they got 250 megabytes additional of free space. So that double-sided incentive program works well. And then I think where conversion optimization works in the process is testing lots of different prompts to get people to participate in the program, testing lots of different invitations and messages that you're sending out, different channels that you're sending out, and so if it's an email invitation, the text that's in that email, and then the text that's on the page when someone signs up, and then there's so many different points where you can test variations, and just in the same principle of conversion rate optimization on conversion flow, you test 10 different things. One's going to be better than the other 9, and so it's about kind of testing each of those touch points. But those would be some. But I think in the case of Dropbox, where I was able to get more of the inside view, I think the really important part is that before we introduced an incentivized referral program, we had an amazing, authentic word of mouth that just happened from people being thrilled with the product and the experience of using the product. And so the program then acted as an accelerant on top of something that's working. I think if you don't have word of mouth, then or have very low word of mouth, then you're not going to probably get that much from building in incentivized word of mouth on top of it. So, and then one other thing I wanted to touch on in the case of Square was that the physical part that triggers the conversation only gets the person on the other end to ask, what is that? But if Square didn't over-deliver sort of on the back-end analytics and some of the other things that really thrill the people with a must-have experience who are actually using, so they met the kind of known needs, and then they met beyond those known needs some additional needs in the experience of seeing where your business is going and different trends and other sorts of pieces that when the question was asked, people were very happy or are very happy to talk about it and spread the word, and then being able to have very low friction ways of trying it, so you can get it for free, and then you just pay the processing on the back end, and some things like that ultimately reduce that friction. So again, increase the desire, reduce the friction, and it drives adoption and has built them into a really valuable business. So, but I think the key point for me on word of mouth is that it is about delivering the must-have experience, about having a must-have experience, fine-tuning delivery of that must-have experience, and every business can benefit from word of mouth if they have that must-have experience and can fine-tune it. And then the things you can do on top of that to accelerate it are even more exciting in being able to drive it. So the last area is this optimized referral program flows was what I was just touching on there too. So the last area of where conversion rate optimization is really critical for driving growth is that it breeds the idea of doubling down on success. It's part of the process for doubling down on success. That in my experience, when conversion rate optimization is done well, it's about, when you run a test and you get an improvement, that's the best signal of where you're likely to get an improvement again. If you're running a test and you're not seeing any movement in a different area, there's a good chance that area was fairly well optimized to start with. And so growth is a lot of that same mentality. If you can't get Google AdWords to work for you, spending more time on Google AdWords might not be the right answer. You might find out that you've got a relatively new product where there's just not a lot of related search for what you're offering, and that you've got to actually go out and build demand rather than just harvest demand. So doubling down on success is a big part of kind of just a principle of growth in general. And so, yeah, when you can improve something, there's a good chance that you can do it again. When you can't improve, move on to something else. And so it's a matter of doubling down on your best pages, your best sources, your user segments that are most likely to convert, and just constantly figuring out where those signals of success are, and putting more wood behind those areas of success. So
well,
I
you just kind of echo that a little bit. I'm quite a student of history, and especially war. And after the very bloody stalemate and trench warfare of World War I, the Germans came up with this new way of conducting war, blitzkrieg or lightning war. And the whole idea was you get local superiority. So in order to attack on a point on a front, they would have 10-to-1 advantage in men and equipment. And then they would just drive super deep and just not stop, not wait for their support people to catch up anything, just go wreak havoc and just exploit that one little narrow opening. So I think you're saying the same thing. Basically, don't try to slog through and grind the stuff that's not working and won't scale. If you find a breakout, you just follow it and exploit it to its fullest, right?
Absolutely. Just, yeah, keep going, build that momentum behind things that are working, and don't get caught up in the areas that you can't move the needle very well, because there's a good chance that they're not that broken to start with. So that's, to me, a lot of times conversion rate optimization is about finding, it's about a continuous improvement process, and the easiest thing to improve is something that's broken. And so you often don't know what's broken and what's not broken until you try to fix it. And when something is fixable, it's probably fixable even better. And so, yeah, it's a matter of being dynamic and going after the lowest hanging fruit for areas to improve.
Okay, well, we're coming down to the final bullet here, or your summary. So, folks, we're going to have some time for questions. Please type your questions into the question pane for Sean, and we'll get to as many of them as we can before the end of the hour.
Perfect. So yeah, just real quick, just to remind everybody the 7 ways that conversion rate optimization helps drive growth. So 1, harvest and enhance desire and intent. Really tap into that intent that's out there and build additional desire, driving people toward the conversion event. In the process, you also want to be reducing friction and frustration that's preventing conversions. When you do those things, those 2 things together, you're going to see an improvement in conversion rates. As you do that, you build business momentum and success in the business. You open up the door to more viable campaigns. Campaigns that worked before conversion rate optimization work even better. Campaigns that didn't work before likely will work afterwards. So you start opening more campaigns, again, building more momentum. And as long as you're understanding what your must-have experiences in your product, you're going to be driving more retention of the customers you're acquiring, which is critical for sustainable growth, and you'll be improving word of mouth. And just that continuous process of doubling down on your successes, building that momentum, that's really, really critical for driving growth. And I think 5 of the companies that I've worked with have reached the $1 billion valuation mark or beyond, and in each of those cases, it's really been about finding ways to build momentum fast, and each of these points were absolutely critical for getting there. So just the last slide here is just to remind you that a lot of what I talked about is sort of before you optimize, you have this frustration, and after you optimize, you have this success. But in truth, that optimization is not something that ever ends. It is a continuous improvement process, and feeding that improvement is generally about quantitative analytics and research, and really understanding what's working, what's not working, just what's happening in general, and looking for areas of opportunity, and then trying to understand why things are working and why they're not working, and the qualitative research that feeds into that, and then just continuously testing and repeating the research around quantitative and qualitative to look for more and more areas to improve and get all of the benefits that we just went through there. So hopefully we've got a few questions.
Absolutely, yeah, we have several, and thank you so much, everybody. I'm sure you're as thrilled as I am to have Sean on today's webinar. Thanks for sharing so freely. One of the things that I wanted to follow up on, PK is asking about, how do you find that must experience for any business? And what I heard you basically saying, well, let me step back. We have something called a Conversion 360, which is an analysis of a whole business from a conversion viewpoint: culture, structure, process, compensation, of course, the usability of the web experience. But one of the key parts of that is we do what we call a touch point audit of every single place where you touch a prospect or a customer, from the way you answer the phone to the emails you send out to your customer return to your packaging and delivery if it's a physical product. But what I heard you basically saying is you can't have a weak spot. Sales must be in on this, marketing, customer service. Everyone's got to play together to create that must-have experience, right?
That was really more directed toward what the NPS was about, Net Promoter Score. So in order for people to promote your product on your behalf, you need everybody participating. But you don't necessarily need great customer support or great sales if to just be a must-have for somebody. Even if they don't like you as a product, if you're a must-have for them, you're a must-have. So for me, it's that question of how would you feel if you could no longer use this product? And if somebody says they would be very disappointed, you want to learn as much as you can about that person, and you want to learn about the 100 people or the 1,000 people who say they would be very disappointed without your product. You want to understand how they're using the product, what is the primary benefit that they get from the product, why is that benefit important to them, what alternatives have they considered. And so as you learn about the benefits and about how the person's using the product, and then you start to actually filter into the differences, the people who consider it a must-have versus the people who don't consider it a must-have. What are the differences in how they're using the product? What are the differences in the profile of the people? All of that information will start to give you deep insights into what your must-have experience is and what you should be driving people toward.
Great, thanks for that. And as you guys can see, we have a slide up right now. For those of you that still haven't been to Conversion Conference, well, those of you that have, first of all, thank you. We usually have 3 shows a year in the U.S. and 3 in Europe, but Chicago was our last show for this year, and we're resetting to a mega standalone show in Vegas starting next year. This pricing here, $797, is never going to be this low again, so take advantage. Go to conversionconference.com if you want great speakers like Sean, like Brian Eisenberg, like Steve Krug, like Jared Spool, Amy Africa. I could go on, then please check out Conversion Conference. And we don't even have the agenda up yet, but you know you want to be there. It's at the Rio next May. Go to conversionconference.com. Okay, now we do have a quick question from Jan about how to apply this to e-commerce sites. Any thoughts on that? Because we've been talking about lead gen in some cases as opposed to actually selling stuff.
Yeah, so I mean, I think e-commerce sites, it's a lot of the same things that we kind of have to look at sort of each of the points, but generally what you want to, exactly as you were kind of touching on before, if somebody has intent for a product, you want to make sure that you're harvesting that intent and delivering them toward whatever product it is that meets their intent. You want to reduce the frustration. So each of these I think applies pretty directly to an e-commerce business. Every time that you figure out a viable channel, what I love about e-commerce businesses is that you have a pretty long tail of potential on-ramps to acquire customers through. So they just need to have intent for a single product that's somewhere in your long tail of products, hopefully, and then if you can optimize the flow for converting that person to that product, then you're going to be able to build that momentum, have that one viable channel, and hopefully be able to extend that to additional viable channels. And I think that the word of mouth piece will generally be more about the holistic experience, and the retention piece will be more about the holistic experience. So that's, I think, harder to do in an e-commerce business, but clearly, like, Zappos did a great job by really differentiating on customer service. So customer service in that case would be, I think, the must-have experience. But,
and then on the website, I would say that with e-commerce, we typically find two major problems. One is the inflexibility of the carts in the checkout process. Most checkout experiences are pretty crappy and ask you to log in and do a bunch of other unnecessary things. And then the other is just, if you have a large catalog, finding your product and having too many choices and not enough guidance along the way to even get down to that proper product detail page. That's the big customer experience issue that we typically see.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think e-commerce definitely seems to be one of the areas that has been most active with conversion rate, or leading the way in conversion rate optimization, and I think it's because it's just so clearly applicable to how do you drive revenue growth in an e-commerce business. Optimization is kind of the key to being able to do that. So this definitely applies to e-commerce.
Okay, Aaron asked, he was asking about this must-have experience, and so the balance between reaching out to kind of your loyal, long-time users versus those that just started using your product. I want to add to that, it's like there's probably, don't you want to find out about the people that didn't end up using it that may have or should have? Again, that ties into kind of asking questions as they're on the site or about to leave the site. So how do you find the right perspective among established users, new users, and those that are just prospects?
Yeah, so I mean, one, I think it's sort of you want to differentiate between your qualified no's and your unqualified no's. So really, if they weren't if you didn't have what they needed and they didn't convert, then there's not really a whole lot you can do without changing your business to serve their needs. But your qualified no's are the ones that are, I think, particularly important to understand. And those are the ones that if you can learn about them, so like one of the ways that I like to learn about them is through exit surveys, particularly the deeper that they get in the conversion funnel. If they're all the way to, say, a shopping cart or a sign-up page, or something that's really close to a conversion event that would make them a yes, then being able to ask them through just mouse intent as they're about to be on that page, to be able to serve a question to them asking, wait, before you go, what was it that stopped you from X, or what, whatever that step is, and that if you can kind of drill into those people, you may find that they're not qualified for the product in the first place, but I think you'll find for a lot of those people that they are qualified. But so for me, it's a matter of understanding the successes and finding the failures that have a lot of the same characteristics as the successes.
Yeah, and I'll put in a word for another vote for the exit surveys. Personally, I hate them and I always dismiss them. I just find them an annoying waste of time that has no value to me. But a surprising percentage of people, even if they're leaving your sites, and often it's 5 to 10%, will actually answer one or two questions on the way out. And so if you have a substantial amount of traffic, you can actually form some meaningful, statistically valid kind of answers out of that.
Yeah, and those are actually some of our highest response rate types of surveys that people run with Qualaroo, because I think a lot of times people are frustrated and they want to vent, and it's just such gold in being able to fix problems. If the people who take the time to answer usually are the ones who know that they should be buying your product, but somehow you did something wrong that prevented them from buying it, or they weren't able to figure something out that was critical.
Okay, now I'm not sure what this means, but Jonathan is asking, what do you think of the jobs to be done framework, and how do you use it if you do? Can you explain what that is if you're aware of it, and talk about that for a minute?
I think I might know what it is, but I would just be guessing. There's this idea of like what is the job for each product, but I think it might even be a Clayton Christensen thing, but I don't know enough about it to really comment beyond saying that I think I know a little bit about it. But I mean, it's a little bit like what if it is what I think he's asking, it's a little bit about what the intent and must-have experience is. Yeah, it just looked like I just got dropped there, but I think it's back. So it's a little bit about what the intent and must-have experience is, and it's about sort of saying what job do they need done and what job is the product effective in doing, and can you connect those two things? And if you can't, then you're not going to drive a good conversion. You might drive a conversion that's not going to be a very
so it's basically like, functional purpose. What is it intended to do, and is it fitness for a particular purpose? Basically, sounds like user-centered design in a sense of like what's the purpose of this thing, and does it serve that purpose? Okay. Quick question from Dragusin. Could you speak about personalization? Any ideas for advanced segments for product categories, for example?
I don't have as much experience as you do there, Tim. So, I mean, do you want to offer some thoughts around that?
Yeah, there's a lot of automatic clustering software that will now kind of tell you how to essentially create your information architecture out of your product set. You don't have to do anything. It basically just kind of figures out what the related concepts are. So I'd be looking at semantic networks and related concepts and things like that. So one of the keys, I think, and I'm just going to tie this as a thread to end our webinar because unfortunately we're out of time, is you have to start thinking from your visitor's perspective and not your company's perspective. I think that's what underlies all of this. What's your visitor's intent? What do they care about? How do they refer to things? What do they use them for? I mean, that sounds like, Sean, been a very, very strong thread through everything you've said. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
It's not about you and what your business wants. It's about the visitor and what they want, including all the baggage and misunderstandings and misconceptions that they're bringing to your website. On that note, unfortunately, we're out of time. We're going to make these questions available to Sean. He may respond individually to some of you. If people also asked about the slides, absolutely, the slides and the recording will be available. You should get a follow-up email if you're registered in the next couple of days. So watch out for that, and hopefully we'll see you on the flip side on our next webinar.